Hello, it's Tom from BlackToad Studio, and I'm here to play a 2,000 point game of 40k, obviously. And in here, for this Warhammer 40k battle report, I have bought my Imperial Guard for the first time in a long while. In fact, I don't remember the last time I had it on here. This is my army in front of you here. It's just a battalion. We'll go into the HQs quickly first. So over here we have a tank commander, and he is in an eradicator. So that's basically got multi-motor sponsons, a las cannon, a hull mounted weapon, and the Nova cannon on top. And also we have a platoon commander and a Lord Commissar there, both with power swords. The platoon commander here is my warlord, and he has the laurels of command. Moving on to troop choices, we have 4 squads of exactly the same. So we've got guard squad here, guard squad here, guard squad here, and a guard squad here. They'll have a sergeant with a combat weapon and a las pistol, a vox, a las cannon as a heavy choice, and a grenade launcher. We also have a cheeky little command squad here with two flamers and a heavy flamer and a sergeant. And then moving on into the heavy section, over here we have 2 exterminators all with heavy bolters on the sponsons and hull mounts, and also obviously the exterminator cannon on the top. And in the middle here we have 2 wyverns armed as stock, so heavy bolters on the front there. And then finally we have a manticore here, all stock as well. And then finally in the main battalion we have a flyer choice, which is up here, which is just a Valkyrie with multiple missile pods and heavy bolters and a multi-laser. Finally, for the auxiliary detachment over here, because this was actually to make up my 2,000 points because I was a little bit shy, is a storm sword with a double sponson upgrade, so 2 las cannons and 2 heavy flamers on each side, and obviously the hull-mounted heavy bolter. I've chosen for my warlord trait Old Grudges, so that's on him. We'll be picking whatever that is shortly. And I've chosen for my regiment to have the Katachan regimental doctrine, and obviously I'll go into that a bit more as we get started. So we'll now go and see what Gavin has bought with his Tyranids. Okay, and here is 2,000 points of Tyranids. So Gavin, what have you bought with you today?
Okay, starting left to right, I've got 16 gargoyles.
Yep.
I've got 2 Morlocks.
So it's at the back here. Yep.
I've got my Trigon Prime with just Trigon Prime. Accompanied with 8 gargoyles.
Brilliant.
And I've got just behind him my warlord with 2 monstrous bone swords. He'll know the smite and the psychic scream ability.
Awesome.
Then just next to that, I've got 2 Tyrannifexes armed with rupture cannons and stinger salvos. Nice. Just in front of that, I've got my Neurophrape. Here, again, he knows smite and psychic scream. I love that. 2 squads of 10 termagants.
Lovely.
And then on the right, I've got 8 more Gene Stealers and another Trigon Prime. And just behind that, I've got another Flying Hive Tyrant with 2 Death Splitters with the worms. And he also knows smite and psychic scream.
Smite and psychic scream. And is it Hive Behemoth? Is that right?
I am Hive Behemoth,
yeah. And
that is a battalion. And for my warlord trait, I'm going to be taking Behemoth Monstrous Hunger.
Excellent. All right, well, we'll be back in a minute with the game and get started. Okay, so here we go, and just before the battle starts, we will go through our deployment and game type, and we'll do the roll-offs as well on camera. So, essentially, this is the frontline warfare mission, Eternal War. It consists of 4 objectives. We've got 1 down here. Then we then have another one in this ruin over here. We also have another one in the defensible position up here, and then I have another one over here. And the premise is basically that your own one is worth 1 point to you, but 4 points to the enemy in your deployment zone, and the 2 middle ones are worth 2 points to anyone who has it. And this is actually at the end of the game, so not every turn. So it kind of counts keeping stuff alive and trying to get to that end part of the game. There's also Slay the Warlord, First Blood, and Line Breaker. So at the moment, I am going first with Guard because I finished deploying. So I'm getting +1 to my roll for going first. So I'm going to roll now, see what I get with the +1. So 3 for me. And I'm going. So at the moment, I'm going first unless Gavin steals. Please don't steal. You, well, great. Gavin is doing a little dance. We'll now swing on over into Tyranids, turn 1. Okay, so as we start the NIDs here on turn 1, we've just ended the movement phase, but as you can see here, we've had 2 of the, I think it was the Morlocks have now gone and burrowed back underground, ready to come back out again. I don't think there's much movement at the back here. However, in the centre here, we obviously have a little flying creature sitting in the middle building there, and also a little bit of movement on this left flank. obviously getting towards objectives, but also just trying to, possibly you could even get a first turn charge here, I think, if it's a bit cheeky. It's a flyer, so no hindrance to the charge in there. We'll now move on into the shooting and psychic phases. Okay, so and the psychic phase here. Basically, this squad has lost, I think it was 4 men in the end from Psychic Scream and also Smite, and that was from this particular model here. And moving over to the middle here, the other Hive Tyrant shot down into the tank commander here and took 2 wounds off using Smite as well, but it also did cast Catalyst on itself, so that has got a bit of extra survivability. We'll now move on to shooting. Again, at the end of turn 1 shooting for the Tyranids. Basically, we had a lot of firepower coming from the Tyrannifexes and also the Hive Tyrant in the middle here. Kind of split their fire into various targets. So we had 2 wounds taken off the tank commander, had 6 wounds taken off the Storm Sword, and in a very unfortunate instant over here, from a nice sniper shot from between these ruins here, as you can see, he's just hiding out there somewhere, he took out the Manticore with a re-rolled dice just to make sure it died. So that is everything, unless, do you have any cheeky charges you want to try and get off? Or we, okay, we're going to try for a charge in a second. We're back in a moment with the combat phase. So as the combat phase for turn 1 for Tyranids ends, the leader Hive Tyrant here charged in and actually managed to get into combat here with a very good charge. We put him up there just to, because it wouldn't quite fit underneath, we just want to keep it in range of where we were fighting. And essentially, I did the Vicious Traps stratagem, which actually did 3 mortal wounds to the Tyrant. He hit back for 2, killing 2 more guardsmen, so that's the total of 6 dead from there. And then after that, one of my guards managed to do 1 wound back to him. So he's taken 4, we've taken 6 in total. I'm going to do the leadership on camera, so obviously they're currently at 6 plus whatever I roll, with a leadership of 7. And that will be the rest of them dead. So we'll be back in a minute with Guard turn 1. Okay, so at the start of the turn 1 for Guard, we've just finished the movement phase, and as you can see here, there's been a little bit of move forward here. So the Storm Sword has come forward to get into flame range for these gargoyles down here, hopefully making easy work of them, but we will obviously see that. The gunship here is flowing over in supersonic mode to get into the back lines here, but also just to keep that +1 and being able to move. However, before it did move, it dropped its contents down here of the little command squad with the Commissar here, hopefully going to put some flamey death into this Hive Tyrant here, the leader. And finally, in the middle here, we had a little move around of all 3 of the tanks, just to spread out a bit, but also keeping the half movement range so they can start to lay down some double turret fire in a minute. So, we're back in a minute with the results of the shooting phase. Okay, so as the Guard finished turn 1 in the shooting phase, we had a lot of firepower flying around here. However, as you can see, not a lot of the Nids have left the board. In fact, actually, I don't think any of the Nids have left the board, apart from 6 gargoyles. Essentially, just to, in a little recap, we put some orders down here. So we got take aim and bring it down on both these squads due to the way I had the laws of command, and I managed to get an extra order off both of them. I put aerial spotter on this Wyvern here so it could re-roll all of its hits. And also we did gunner's kill on sight to this rear Russ here. So to sum up, basically everything over here, and basically both the Wyverns and these tanks shot into the Hive Tyrant in the ruins here, along with a bit of help from the rocket pods over here, and a couple other sources, and got it down to 1 wound. Unfortunately, by that point, I really got down to just being able to fire the Storm Sword, so he declared all his weaponry, fired a couple of las cannons over here, didn't do enough damage to it in the end, because the catalyst rolls were rather strong for the Nids. And then he fired his main cannon over here and took it down to 1 wound as well. So, interesting times. We're going to see what happens now when we roll into the combat phase, because I'm going to try and get 1 cheeky charge off down here from these guardsmen and see if we can take the last wound off the lead here, but I think we're being quite optimistic, and then we've got a lot more to deal with next turn, so back in a moment. Okay, so at the end of the combat phase in turn 1 for Guard, sadly, whether it was the right or wrong thing to do, I decided to charge the Commissar in, and he whiffed all of his attacks and then died. So the leader is still alive. Unfortunately, the command squad down here did not make it into combat, which is a bit of a shame. However, we'll now move on into turn 2 for the Tyranids. Okay, so at the end of the movement phase for the Tyranids, and we've got quite a lot of action on the board now, lots of things popping up from underground. So the Storm Sword has been completely surrounded by Morlocks, so there's going to be some mortal wounds happening here shortly. We'll go through them in a minute. And also, during the psychic phase in a minute, there'll be a lot of these things going on. Finally, over here, we had another one pop up. It's a Trigon, isn't it? Yeah, Trigon jumped up here. Ready to do some assaulting on the commander's tank, pretty much. Other than that, we had a little bit of movement from the Hive Tyrants, as we've seen there. Do we need to do these mortal wounds now then, do we? We'll come back in a minute. Okay, so we just worked all out the mortal wounds here. There's a few bits going on. Also, just before we do that, the Hive Tyrant here regained a wounds using rapid regeneration. The Morlock here did 3 wounds to this guy here. And also, I think another wound to the tank in the middle. And also the Morlock here did some more here, taking this down to 17 wounds remaining. So, we'll now move on into the psychic and shooting phase, and let's see what happens. Okay, we'll wrap up the psychic phase very quickly. So down here, actually I'll start where it began, over here, where we had the Warlord actually get Catalyst off, but didn't get Smite off. Then we moved over to here, and we had Smite and Psychic Screen go off, taking this down by 4 wounds, so he's down 10. And then finally over here, we had Smite go off on here and took off another wound here. So he is down to 16 wounds now. Still in the fight, but took a lot of pain. We'll now move on to some shooting. Okay, and at the end of the shooting phase, essentially not a lot actually happened. There was a lot of firing shots coming in from the Tyrannofexes here into the Storm Sword. However, I did do a re-roll for one of the saves and actually saved it. Otherwise, it would have taken, I think it was 5 to 6 wounds, I think it was, definitely. Other than that, there was a couple of little shots that came in from the Death Spitters here, and also, I think it was the rattle on the, basically on the tail there, but they didn't do anything to either of their targets, which was the Tank Commander and the Storm Sword. So that is pretty much all of the shooting done. We're now going to see if there's any combat, which I presume there might be a couple of charges, possibly, but we'll see. Okay, so at the end of the combat phase for the Nids here, in a desperate attempt to try and get into combat here to prevent more Overwatch, the Gargoyle squad here basically suicided themselves on there. It was quite a painful experience for them, I think, sadly. And over here, it was a kind of a all-score draw. No one lost an Overwatch and no wounds done in combat by the Genesteers here, which was, in my opinion, pretty unlucky, considering not 1-6 was rolled during the entire combat phase for doing the wounds. So, yeah. However, that is the end of turn 2 for Nids. We're now going to move on to turn 2 for Guard. Okay, so at the start, or at the end of the movement phase, I keep going to the start for some reason, but at the end of the movement phase for Guard in turn 2, down here, we had a little command squad sneak around the back here to this Morlock. I don't know if that's a good decision by them, but the Sergeant thought, do you know what, let's get in there. The Storm Sword has just shuffled to the right side just to bring him a little bit away from things. It doesn't really make much difference because he can still move and fire. Over here, the 2 Russes here have decided to stand their ground, just pivoting round, ready to shoot at the various targets in the very target-rich environment. The Tank Commander has moved out of combat. Obviously, he can't shoot, but he just wanted to make sure the Genesteers couldn't just get a free hit in a minute. And then everything else has actually stayed still, bar the Valkyrie over here. Just flowing around here just to keep his... He's got plenty of options to shoot with. He doesn't know what he's going to do yet. That will be it. So, we're now going to head on into the shooting phase for Guard in turn 2. Okay, so at the end of the shooting phase for Guard, most of the fighting or shooting was focused over in this area, and as you can see, the 2 Hive Tyrants, and obviously the one of them was the leader of the army, has been removed. That was actually mainly done from the 2 tanks down here, and basically everything else then, so the Wyverns and the Storm Sword all shot into the Morlocks here. This Morlock was down to 1 wound, and all I needed to roll was more than 1 damage on a las cannon shot, and I rolled a 1. So he still lives. He's probably going to run away in a minute. We shall see. This Morlock took a few flamer shots from here, but not really that many. And he's down to 5 from the Storm Sword's weaponry on there. And there was a few shots from the Valkyrie over here that helped to finish off the Hive Tyrant. So that's all the shooting. I am going to be doing an assault because I don't really want these Gene Seers in front of this tank any longer. So we're back in a minute. Okay, so at the end of the combat phase for Guard, down here, the only bit of combat we actually had was a charge into the Gene Seers here. We actually managed to kill 2 of them, leaving 1 on his own. So not too bad, and then there's no wounds done back somehow. So at the end of that phase, I did get 1 actual victory point there, which was to kill the Warlord, which I've put onto my counter. However, that just ties us one apiece at the moment. We'll now move on into turn 3 for the Tyranids. So as Tyranids end their movement phase in turn 3, over here both Morlocks, having sensed a bit of firepower, have both ducked back underground and gone into reserve, ready to come back on another turn. And over here, the other Trigon I should say, has come on with his little friends there, ready to cause a bit of havoc in the back line on this side of the board again. And also this Trigon has come towards the commander tank, but also the Guard squad down here, probably a little bit shaken by what's coming up from behind. That is the movement phase. We'll now head on to Psychic and Shooting. Okay, so at the end of the Psychic phase and the Shooting phase, over here we had Psychic Screen take off a few wounds here, but then also we had a big Tyrannifex shot come in here, taking it down to 9 wounds, pardon me. And moving over to this side of the table, we had a few of the rattles fire in to the squads in the ruins, and I think a couple died, but nothing too tragic. And I think 1 wound got took off the tank here from the Tyrannifex over there. We're going to move on into the combat phase. So at the end of turn 3 for the Nids, the combat phase has finally been finished here, and we had a charge go off for the Trigon here, who got in, and he's taken my tank commander down to 1 wound. Nothing was done back to him by him, obviously. However, the Catatan squad here managed to finish off the last Gene Stealer in combat, and that is everything for the combat phase. I didn't fail any leaderships, so we're going to move on into Guard, turn 3. So as the Guard take to turn 3 movement, we have had our movement here, and over here the Storm Sword has moved around the corner. It's limping a little bit now because it's on quite low wounds. The Command Squad is just coming up the side here just to try and secure this objective possibly. Moving over to this side of the board. The Valkyrie has flown over the top of the ruins there to come into this area, try and lend some fire support to the various threats that are hovering around here. And unfortunately, as the tank commander is so banged up, he had to move back very slightly and have the Guard squad cover his retreat because he's in pretty bad condition now, and he can't actually shoot again due to him having just come out of combat. So that's pretty much it. We'll now move on into the Guard's shooting phase. Okay, so as the Guard's guns die down at the end of the shooting phase, over here, the Gene Seers were pretty much taken out by some group fire over here from the las guns from the Guard, along with the las cannons firing into the Trigon that was here, managing to actually wipe that out in the end. Then there was an absolute fusillade of fire that flew over the top here from the Wyverns, the Exterminators, and the Storm Sword here, firing into a split kind of fire operation into this Tyrannifex and this Tyrannifex, and we took 12 wounds off this one, and I think it was just 3 off this one. So not bad, however, not exactly off the table yet. So that is all of my shooting. I don't actually have any charges to declare, so let's see what happens in Tyranids turn 4. So at the end of the movement phase in turn 4 for the Tyranids, there was some damage on here because both the Morlocks obviously popped back up. Over here, did 3 damage to the Super Heavy over here, so that was pretty good, and also killed an additional Guardsman down here. Moving over to this side of the board, this Morlock, which I was going to try and prevent, but just couldn't get the spacing right. Unfortunately, came up and did an absolute hell of damage with the mortal wounds here. So nothing actually happened to the Wyvern though. We lost some Guardsmen here, some Guardsmen here. We also lost the commander tank, and also took another mortal wound off this remaining Russ here. So that's all the movement done. We'll now head on into the shooting and psychic. So as the Tyranids shooting phase comes to an end, and also psychic, unfortunately down here the Stormsword has met its demise, and that was from psychic and some very good shooting from this Tyrannifex here. It didn't blow up though, which is much to the dismay of these guys from down here, who are kind of hoping that it might take that out with him, even if they might have died in the process. Over to this side of the board, we had some more shooting coming into here. This guard squad has really taken an absolute rinsing from the Morlock, sorry, not the Morlock, the Trigon over here, taking it down to pretty much just 4 men remaining, so leadership will be due there shortly. The Genesi over here is obviously heading towards the objective. So yeah, we'll now head on to some combat. So at the end of Tyranids turn 4 assault, the Trigon, tried to charge into the Wyvern here, took a wound and didn't quite make the charge, and that was all the Tyranids did. So we're going to head on to guard, turn 4. Okay, so guard, turn 4, movement down here. The command squad has moved round to get this objective here, however there are still quite a few threats over there for them to deal with. The Valkyrie has shot over to this part of the airspace to try and lend some aid in this area. The 2 tanks, Lee and Russ's back, have stayed still because they've got a lot of shots to pile into various locations, and I think they don't want to hinder their shooting. This guard squad in the middle has actually advanced to get forward as far as possible, because I think I'm going to make them move in a minute. And also down here, this guard squad has moved up to face the Trigon, however it may not be very sensible. We'll see what happens in the shooting phase. So at the end of turn 4 for guard, because I will not be doing an assault, we managed to get off one of the Morlocks by just basically shooting a hell of a lot at it in the end, because it seemed to just want to survive. Also, we got rid of the other one that was on 1 wound over here, which was reasonably easy because it was only obviously on the 1 wound, and the Flamers managed to finish that off. However, back here on the back of the board here, the Tyrannifex is still alive on 1 wound, just not wanting to go to bed just yet. So we're heading into the end game now as we head on into turn 5 for the Tyranids. So I think as the movement phase ends in turn 5 for the Tyranids, they are sensing the weakness of the guard on this flank, and they've lined up a firing squad over here to take out the remaining guard squad over here. So that is all the movement they have done though. So as you can see here, the board looks like this at the moment. And we'll head on into the psychic and shooting. Okay, so at the end of the Tyranids shooting and psychic phase, unfortunately, as suspected down here, this guard squad was completely wiped off this area. There was some other shooting going on over this way. We had the Wyvern take some fire from the Tyrannifex down to 5 wounds. That was pretty good. There was actually a couple of shots coming to the Lehman Road Russ here, but he actually managed to save. And then finally here, this guard squad took some rattlesnake tail to the face, and they managed to lose 2 more there, so there's a potential leadership fail coming up there. That is all the shooting. We have got a little bit of charging to go, so let's see what happens at the end of the combat phase. I decided to start this end of the combat phase for Tyranids here, focus on these 3 dice here, because this was the result of 3 hits for the Trigon in this combat over here. Gavin not very impressed with that particular round of combat, and the Guardsmen actually managed to take a wound off them. So that is the end of the combat phase. We'll now head on into turn 5 for the Guard, which is actually going to be the last turn because we're actually running really late tonight, so we decided to tie it up on turn 5 the last turn. So we were both aware of that, just so you're aware if you're watching. And we'll be back in a minute. So at the end of the Guard movement phase over here, this squad has backed out of combat to make sure that people can shoot at this particular model here. We have moved over this way as well, where essentially this Russ has moved around to make sure he's got line of sight on the targets on the left-hand side of the board. And of course the Valkyrie over here has shot overhead to try and make sure he can secure or at least wipe off Obviously he can't secure it himself, but he's going to wipe them off that objective there. Obviously the other little thing that you might not have been aware of, depending on camera angles, is this sneaky little squad back here, which I'm going to have to try and kill to have a chance of maybe even a draw, but we'll see. So back in a moment with the shooting phase. Okay, so at the end of the shooting phase, well, we're almost there, but we're just going to go over a little recap here before we do the last roll of the game. Basically over here, obviously the Valkyrie did actually manage to finish off them with some help of some of the weaponry over here actually. So that's now no longer being controlled by anyone. Obviously over here I am holding this objective. Gavin is holding an objective back there. We both have at the moment one apiece for one for Slay the Warlord and one for I think First Blood for you. So at the moment, Gavin has Line Breaker because he's here. However, he's on 1 wound after shooting everything at it, and this guardsman rapid fired his las gun into it and rolled a double 6 to hit and a double 6 to wound. So we're now down to this, and this will basically cause a draw if Gavin fails one of these saves. And he does! We'll be right back in a minute with a recap. Okay, so obviously at the end of the game you saw the result. It was a draw in the end, down to one of the last shots by one of probably the weakest weapons in the game, which is quite amusing. But yeah, I had a really good game there. I don't know about you, Gav. You had a good session there. Even though it was a draw, but that doesn't necessarily matter. It's always good to have it felt like it deserved to be a draw towards the end, I think. So. But yeah, first time using my guard in a little while. I must admit, I've got a mixed bag of results from I think actually my favourite guns so far in this one were probably these guys down here, these two with the exterminator cannons on them, just absolutely rinsing out wounds with their two wounds apiece from each damage they did. Any favourite unit yours, Gav, or was you sort of?
Favourite unit would be my Tranfex.
Yeah, I'd have to say.
Popping your
just
tank.
Just the amount of damage I'm popping out as well, really nice. So
Kill your Manticore first.
And the Manticore first turn, yeah, I didn't even get to fire it, damn it. But yeah, so that's it. I hope you all enjoyed watching the game. As usual, if you like what you see, give us a sub, and also please comment away and let us know what we're doing right, wrong, or or anything you enjoyed. So this is Tom from BlackToad Studio, and I'll see you soon.